talking about our neutral standing poses twists. So in our, practice today, we had revolved chair, revolved lunge, and revolved triangle. So revolved chair is Parvrita Utkatasana. Revolved lunge is Parvrita Parsvakonasana. And revolved triangle is Parvita Trikonasana. So we obviously know the first word means revolved or twist, right? Twist or revolved, again, that depends on the translation you see, whether they call it revolved. So twisted triangle is also called revolved triangle, just depends on the translation that you see. So the twists. So we have the chair, the triangle, lunge, and we also did revolved half moon today. We're not necessarily going to get through all of them in our Asana lab, but we are going to look at some of them anyhow. So what is the typical foundation for a neutral standing twist?
Do you think with the part?
Depends on the pose. So all twists are built on the foundation of another neutral standing pose. Okay, so a warrior one is still a neutral standing pose. Technically our twisted triangle starts there, but then you have to get into pyramid pose. So that's one of the convoluted ones, because we call it twisted triangle, but it's actually from a warrior one base moving into our pyramid pose, and then we twist. So it's a twisted triangle. So it is not the base of a triangle, but it's a twisted triangle. Our revolved lunge is a lunge and a twist. Our revolved chair is a chair and a twist. And our revolved half moon isn't half moon. It's actually warrior three with a twist. Okay? So it's not always what it's called, right? So a revolved triangle is not actually a triangle. It's actually a pyramid with a twist. Okay, so just to confuse matters. So it's about the engagement through the hips, which is what makes it a neutral pose. So we are trying to keep our hips neutral, right? If our hips were coming out of neutral, then that would not be a neutral standing twist. All standing twists are neutral, just so you know. Oftentimes the twist will come from their hips. So in our chair, what did I tell you to watch?
Knees.
Why?
Because if you're twisting with the hips, one knee will be in front of the other.
Yes. So we want to isolate the torso and twist from the torso, not twist from the hips. So it's keeping that long spine. Having a set shoulder girdle will help them to twist more effectively from the torso rather than from the hips. What are the benefits of neutral standing twists? You have this in your manual on page 94.
Spiral rotation.
Yep.
Heating.
Yep.
Engages core.
Yep.
Massages viscera.
What's that mean?
Your internal organs. Or
Yeah. So it's interesting. This is one of those ones that some people go, oh, that's woo-woo. That you're not massaging anything internal, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it said both ways. And I used to be on the camp of that's woo-woo, you're not doing anything to do with digestion when you're doing twists, blah, blah, blah. And then I learned about fascia.
Right? And it's all through.
It's all connected. So guess what? You actually are massaging your internal organs when you're doing things like hugging these into the chest and twisting the body because you're pulling on the fascia, which is affecting everything inside. So people thousands of years ago understood fascia, and we're just learning about it now. Cool, right? What else does it do?
Teaches scapular stability.
Yep.
Energizing and grounding.
Yep.
and challenging balance. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
May open hamstrings and outer foot.
Yep, depending which one you're doing, absolutely. Adds tension to your IT band as well. What are some common risks and misalignments?
Spinal disc injury.
Yes, so remember what I said about forward folds with a twist, highest risk for disc injuries. So
Well,
making sure that they always have a long spine. So technically our revolved half moon is a forward fold with a twist. So is our revolved triangle, right? So we want to be mindful that they're keeping a long spine. It's when they round through the spine and then try to twist when they're going to be at higher risk for those disc injuries. What else?
neck issues.
So oftentimes we will teach, so in revolved triangle, we'll teach to look up to the top hand, but that might bother their neck.
Yeah.
So whenever I offer that, I always say, or keep your neck in neutral, right? There should be no pain in the neck. We're not trying to create a pain in people's necks. What else?
It says hips but not balanced or unsquared. Is that them in the position or is that just a natural, they may not be able to come into that position? They may have something happening?
No, so that's when, so a revolved chair, you twist and do this,
Okay.
right? So that's gonna, your hips are out of alignment there. So then again, we're coming from the hips rather than from the spine.
So is that one dangerous, or is it just something you shouldn't do? Like if your hips aren't balanced?
So.
Like, I mean, the other ones are like spinal disc injury, but if you're just not square.
That can cause injury too. That can cause injury too. So generally, so where you see people all the time is they do this. This is not twisted chair. We want to be down to twist. Okay? And I didn't see where my knees were there, but
They were good.
okay.
Watch.
Okay. I was focusing on trying to get deeper in the twist, but that's what we miss all the time. So even in our lunge, you see people do this. To really get there, I actually need to sink. Okay? So it's a long spine. If they can't get there because they can't get that low, like that twisted chair, that's really freaking low. Like that's hard. My chair is usually here. I don't like to go that deep in chair because that's just not comfortable for my body. But if I'm gonna twist it, to get there, I have to go way, 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 way down to get there. So sometimes I will just say, maybe you're here.
Right.
That's okay. I'm still getting a twist in my chair. Pregnancy. We avoid deep twists in pregnancy, primarily because the belly gets in the way, right? It's not comfortable for them. Open twists would be fine. So a chair twist, that version I just showed you, would be fine for pregnancy, but you're not gonna have them sink way down and squish their belly and try to twist. There just wouldn't be space. Straight leg poses, unsupported hyperextension, hamstring pull. So this could be in the warrior 3 at the wall with the twist, so revolved half moon. The front leg is at risk of a hamstring pull there. Same with the revolved triangle. The front leg would be at risk of a hamstring pull if they're going too deep. When in a sequence would we put these poses?
Well, certainly once you're born.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other poses to get there.
We've done this sequence where just to warm up like this, like a more mild twist, support it.
Right, but these are standing, right? We're specifically talking standing neutral twists. So where would these, some of these are going to be peak poses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you
Right?
go.
I don't know the eagle is in this group. No. So we're just talking about revolved chair, revolved lunge, revolved triangle, and our revolved half moon. Those are the ones specifically we're talking about in this case. So revolved half moon, definitely a peak pose.
Yeah,
Even revolved triangle, depending on your group, could very much be a peak pose.
for sure.
Revolved chair is usually pretty accessible for people if you're not saying you've got to get the elbow to the outside, right? If you're doing a little more upright with a twist, so that's probably not a peak. More like an activation pose, getting you ready. And our revolved lunge, similar. It could be a peak depending on the group, right? I don't teach revolved high lunge to my seniors, ever.
Yeah.
Their balance just isn't there. They can barely do a regular high lunge, never mind a revolved high lunge. So, revolved chair starts on page 96. So what is its purpose?
Rotated spine.
Spinal rotation, yep.
Some more viscera massage.
Yep.
Strengthen the back and the glutes.
Yep, engages core and back muscles, yep.
Strengthens midline and adductors.
Yep,
And creates heat and strength.
absolutely. It also can open the chest. That actively pressing of the palms together can open the chest as well.
And they show different ways to modify it there too, where you just got your hand on the outside of your knee and the other hand
Yeah.
on the hip.
Yep.
To the one we did, and then a
Yeah,
deep
so
one.
the one that they showed deep, that would be a big chest opening on that top side,
Mhm.
right? So, yeah. Page 96 for chair, if you're not on that one, Raven. So what are the risks of this pose?
The knees again coming into alignment.
Overwhelming the lower back, tailbone tucking.
Yep,
Thoracic flexion or extension.
thoracic flexion or extension, yeah, so they could be puffing up, extension up here, or they could be really rounding through the back to get there, so either one, we want a neutral spine. Could be pressure on the knees as well, because generally we teach twisted chair with feet closer together. The first side I took you in, feet were further apart, then I asked you to switch your stance for the second side, just so you can see the difference. There could be twisting of the sacroiliac joint, so the SI joint. So people that have SI joint issues may struggle with this pose. And higher risk of disc injury in this pose too. Almost any twist has a higher risk of disc injury. So traditional full expression is feet together. That does help with twisting because it provides more stability. Elbow to outer knee is the full expression, but remember we don't have to go that far. Modifications and variations, so you can take the feet hip distance. It's harder to maintain hip stability here, but you can get a little more rotation from the spine here for some people. Open arms or floating arms, so that's what they show you in the mild picture. Those would be open arms. Hand to the outer knee instead of elbow to the outer knee would be a modification as well. How could we use props?
Like if you're doing the deep one, you could have a block on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Between the knee, between the legs.
Could be, yeah. So if somebody struggles to bring the feet all the way in for whatever reason, putting a block between their knees and asking them to squeeze the blocks will still get that adductor engagement that helps to stabilize the hips. So yeah, that could be a good option. What about putting their butt up against the wall? No. Then they're gonna feel if their hips are shifting,
Right.
right? Use it as feedback. And where would we sequence this pose?
Activation or peak.
Probably activation for this one because it's the most accessible standing pose. So it's a good one to put in if you're going to go to other standing twists. It's the most accessible standing twist pose. Okay. Let's see your revolve chair. Oh, clearly I didn't learn my lesson. I said that back there with the lid off.
Oh, good memory.
So I'm not gonna cue you, I just want you to go. Okay, everybody come up. Margaret, go back into yours. take a look, and what do we see?
Her knee is coming forward.
Yep, there we go, there we go. Nice. Good. Kelly?
Slight rounding in the upper back.
And he's also going forward just a little bit. It's hard. Yeah. Okay, come on up. Stacy?
I'm gonna try this because you gotta be curious because it's the knee thing. Let's just see if it works. Oh yeah. Okay.
I say it definitely works.
Not bad.
I can feel the back, so it's open,
Yeah.
and I can really feel it here, which I wasn't able to before.
Right. All right, Raven.
Got it.
Yeah.
She felt it, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, come on up.
Awesome.
The other thing, generally speaking, we want our hands to stay at heart. So almost everybody twisted and they're like this.
Ah.
So we're getting this going on instead of this going on. So try again and try to keep your thumbs on your sternum. Does it feel a little different,
It was smaller.
right?
Can't get.
Okay,
Yeah.
come up. Go to the other side and try the mild one. So reach the hand, other hand on the hip, and twist.
That feels good, actually.
Okay. Let's go back to the other side. Let's see if we can find the deep one. So start and slide down. And reach the other hand to the sky. Okay, come on out.
I gotta do the other side now.
Hey, if you need to do the other side, feel free to take a moment. Okay, so common misalignment. So we saw a few already. The front knee is really far over the ankle. So some people will be like, right? So how would we fix that? Yes, try to slide your hips back a little bit, right? Now, it's kind of tippy already, so we don't want them to shift too much forward or back, but usually if the knees are way forward, their chest is like way up. So remember what I said about chair, we want our shins and our back to be kind of parallel. Okay? Knees shifting, so that's, we've talked about that one a few times. So ask them to keep their knees aligned, try it against a wall, right? Different things we can do. Hips too high, so that's this thing. See it all the time. I'm like, that's like a forward fold, kind of with a twist. I'm not sure that's chair pose. Get your butt down.
I give it up.
It's very, very common. You can ask them to sit back into the hips, or ask them to sit back first and then twist. Tucking of the tailbone. Sometimes people are in it with this kind of shape going on. We want that neutral spine. We also don't want extension of the spine. Spine in that C curve, so the opposing, so it can go either way. So basically we're asking for that long spine. If they're tucked under, we might ask them to try to slide their thigh bones back. That can help untuck them, right? Because think about our universal cues. We pull back, that creates a anterior pelvic tilt. If they're really in a posterior pelvic tilt, pushing the thigh bones back, we'll fix it. And punching the shoulders, rounding the upper back. Those are the common ones. So drop shoulders down away from the ears, choose a different arm option, right? So if they're in the hands and they're like this, have them drop one hand and pull the other hand to the hip, that kind of thing. Okay, revolved high lunge or low lunge on page 98. Questions on our revolved chair first? No? Okay.
rotate the spine.
Strengthens the
Almost all
back.
the same things
Yeah.
as the last
Yeah.
pose, right? We're just kind of repeating ourselves at this point. I don't think there's anything different with this one. Create
No.
stability, was that on the other one?
Yes.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they're all the same ones. Risks, all again, same. Low lunge, there's also the risk of the pressure on the knee. So that's the only real different one for there. What is the traditional full expression of the pose? It's actually a warrior one base, not a high lunge, and it's a twist from warrior one. So remember, in warrior one, we already have torque on that back knee, and then you're asking for more twist from the spine to get there. That's why we tend to teach it from high lunge instead of from warrior one. Okay? Traditionally heels aligned, but as we know, feet hip distance apart, much more stable. Neutral base, back heel down, turn towards 60 degrees. We're not doing that in high lunge. Hip square, spine neutral in all planes, butt rotation, and the bottom arm is touching the floor. Top arm reaching up and over by ear. So do we know what I'm saying there? There's probably a picture of it here.
There is
Yeah,
on the knee.
yeah. So I don't know about you, but my body's probably not going in that shape. Anybody? Anybody think they can get there?
The very last one?
Yeah, that's the traditional. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy amount of rotation going on in her body there.
Is your hand in front, your
Yeah.
foot at the front?
The knees
Yeah.
The
are
other
the-
foot is
So-
turned the other way?
Yeah, so it's from warrior one. I'm not trying to get there, but it's
Oh.
like tipped over here, this down like this, and then this arm up and reaching over. So you have to really twist your chest this way when you're in
Yeah.
that warrior one. It's, I mean, I'm hypermobile and I'm looking at that going, huh? What are you doing with your body? So that's why we teach it from our high lunge. It is more accessible from high lunge. So modifications, teach it from high lunge. Having the back knee down can be challenging for the knee.
It says back heel at wall.
Yep, you could try the back heel at the wall if that's helpful. Palms pressing at heart is easier than trying to reach the hand down and up, right? You could use, sorry, I'm jumping into props, and I don't want to do that yet. There is also the option to do a bind in this pose. Does everybody know what a bind is?
Hands behind the back, yeah.
Yeah.
Or between your legs.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Which way am I going? So I'm not just going back to you. So it would be. I'm trying to think. No.
Back here, I think.
Why can't I wrap my brain around that? So I'm used to doing it in side angle. So side angle, your bind is here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So it'd be like the
right.
opposite of that, and my brain does not want to wrap around what that would look like. I don't think my arms are long enough to bind in high lunge, but you can add a bind, but I'm not sure. I'd have to think on that one. So apparently you can add a bind. So you can continue to think about that. I'm like, my brain was going to side angle there, but no, I'm not quite sure how we add a bind in that one. Open twist could be an option. So instead of twisting, so I'm just going to do it in low lunge. So instead of twisting this way, twisting this way. That's an open twist. Okay, so that might be a great option for somebody who's expecting, because they don't have space. They're going to compress here versus here. They have space to twist. Bottom hand on a block. Right, so if we're, again, from the low lunge, that gives us a little more height to twist. Then if we're down here, we're a little more compressed. Something underneath the knee for the back foot. Strap for the bind, so if you can figure out how to bind your high lunge, please tell me, because really I can't remember how. I'll have to look that one up later. And where would we sequence it? activation.
activation.
Yeah, because it's gonna get us ready for the more complex standing twists. Okay. Let's see your low lunge twist. So remember what we talked about with the thumbs on the sternum.
Oh yeah, I can't get anywhere near this thing, because I'm going like
So let's
this.
go low lunge first, Raven. We're gonna do high lunge after. Yeah. Okay, so come back to center. Same side, lift to high lunge and twist the same way. Remember to think about sinking down into the pose to get the twist. You can get a little more twist as you sink. There we go. Nice. Come on back out.
Okay.
Other side, low lunge first. Good. And come back to center. Find your high lunge. And give it a twist again. Nice. Come on out. All right. So what are some of the common misalignments? So what did you guys feel in those?
Harder to keep my hands to the sternum, wasn't
Couldn't
getting
get on
nearly
this
as much
side.
movement.
Okay.
I could get it on the other side, but I couldn't get it on this side. Hips, twisting.
Okay. Was it easier to twist when the knee was down or when the knee was up?
Changing it up.
When it was up. You had more space.
Cause you could get lower and then I could get around.
You're already down on the ground when the knee's down, so you don't have space. So I rarely teach it with hands to heart when the knee's down. I usually have one hand down and lift the other hand up. Still revolve low lunge. So different arm variation. When the knee is up, you do have more space to sink down and lengthen the spine to get more twist, absolutely. Front knee not over ankle is a common misalignment, and that could go either way. So they could either be too far forward or too far back.
I was too far back from the one, I think it was the low ones the first time, yeah.
Right.
It was like that.
Yeah, so asking them to align their knee over their ankle, right? Or shift your knee forward, shift your knee back, depending on what you're seeing. Hips not square. Usually we need to lift the back thigh up. So that oftentimes they will kind of sink down and we want them to, so being mindful of what's happening in the hips. Tucking of the tailbone. So this would be really pulling under in this one. With this one, so when we're in our high lunge, we might want to, but if you remember when I cued you, I'm gonna turn my back to you again. When I cued you before we twisted in the class, I said press back through that heel. Now I have a nice long line from my heel to the top of my head. If I'm here, I'm gonna round through the spine more. You can also get twisting to the side when they twist, so one shoulder will drop down. So thinking about that length in the spine the whole way. Spinal flexion or extension, so they might be doing this or they might be doing this. So cueing that long spine, lifting up through the top of the head, always punching shoulders or rounding the upper back. That will likely be a common misalignment in every single pose. Okay. Questions on high lunge, or revolved high lunge, sorry, or low lunge.
I really like low lunge. I like high lunge.
So come back down for low lunge for a moment. Step one foot forward, I don't care which one.
Hold it back side, I couldn't get there. Oh, that's so funny.
Whatever foot you have forward, opposite hand on the ground. and reach the other hand up.
Yeah, that's much more accessible.
Much more accessible. And they could still add a block underneath that bottom hand if they needed to lift up a little more. Release, if you want to equal out, you can do the other side. The common thing that you see with this particular one though, is people do it here. So they gotta,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right.
They're back here.
yeah. They're more in a 90-90 instead of in an actual low lunge. That's the most common mistake people make on a low lunge with a twist. All right, page 101 has our revolved triangle. So this one has a couple of other purposes. So what do we have here?
Opens hamstrings.
Stretches hamstrings. Yep.
Ooh, that's tension over the IT man.
Yep.
Oh.
Balance,
There is some balance. That's a risk actually for this one.
okay.
So there's one other purpose that wasn't in the other. Works the muscles of the scapula and upper back.
It's not listed.
Oh, you guys don't have that one. Oh, well, there we are.
Um,
Now you know. Works the muscles of the scapula and the upper back. So the risks, Margaret already said one, balance. Actually, these are only one different than the other. What is the one risk that wasn't in the other two?
Sorry.
Unsupported hyperextension.
Oh, the front.
Yeah.
leg.
Because in the other two, it's a bent knee, so it's not a risk. But this one, the front leg is completely straight.
Oh,
So there's a risk of hyperextension. Traditional full expression is heel to heel alignment. Back foot is turned forward about 60 degrees. Pelvis is neutral, hips squared. Both legs are straight. Long spine with some flexion. Hand outside the front shin on block or floor and looking up to top thumb. So you can see in the picture, the block on the outside is the full expression, so the second picture. So when we did it this way, right?
Right.
Full expression is actually this hand all the way over here. So you're gonna get a bigger twist, but you're way more tippy.
Yeah.
And looking up to the top hand as well. Modifications and variations. So what could we use for modifications and variations? Might also fall under props.
Or block a lot.
Yep. Block under either of the shoulders.
Length of stance can give more space. A shorter stance may feel more stable.
Yeah. So we did it with a longer stance today because we went from a high lunge into it. That's more Iyengar style. The shorter stance is more Ashtanga style. Not that it matters, you can do it either way. Sometimes I teach it one way and sometimes I teach it the other. It's not a pose I teach commonly anyway. But you can do it either way.
Using a wall.
Yeah, you could have them next to a wall, so because it can be very tippy, so it can be helpful to be next to the wall for sure. Back heel at the wall, is that what you meant too?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so if I was gonna use a wall for this one, I would probably actually have them sideways to the wall.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so that if they tipped over to the side a little bit, they'd have a little support.
It says top hand to hip or sacrum. Arm should
Yeah,
be.
so instead of
open.
reaching up to the sky, they could pull their hand to their hip.
Sometimes when my shoulder's not bothering me, I can't lift it up. So-
Yeah, exactly.
Put it on
I think
my hip,
Stacy, you were
I know.
mentioning that in the revolved half moon.
Yeah.
Taking the arm up was feeling like a lot, right? So hand on the hip might be,
it makes
I have
A
to
good
do that
option.
sometimes.
Yeah. absolutely. Where would we sequence this one?
Let's see.
I heard a peak, it could be a
Yeah,
peak,
yeah.
depending on your class, yes. We
Yeah.
didn't use it as peak, but it absolutely could be peak.
But action
Yeah,
for
it is.
more experienced or It could just be an action for a more experienced class.
Activation, yeah.
Activation, sorry.
Activation, yeah. So essentially, you need to already be warmed up for rotation. So it
Yeah.
needs to be after some other poses that have already got you twisting, and your hamstrings need to be already open. So you have to think about, have I done any hamstring opening? Have I done any twisting? If you said yes to both of those, it can probably go in at any point at that time. You would change your arm variation based on what you're doing in the rest of your class. So you might choose intentionally to put the hand on the hip because you're going to be teaching a lot of other things where you want to twist that way as well versus the hand up. You could technically also teach that hand wrapped behind the back,
Yes.
depending on what you're doing. And those notes don't make any. What is, they've put in what's its purpose again and then put in common misalignments. That's funny. All right, so let's see. Actually, you know what? Let's not see this one. We're not warm enough for this one anymore. I don't want to make you guys go into this one because if you're not warm, this one's higher risk for injuries. So our revolved triangle pose. We know what it looks like. We all tried it. Was that a new pose for anybody today?
Revolved triangle?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I've taught it a couple times in my classes. I don't teach it frequently, so you may not have done it with me before. If you're doing other classes, you said you've done it before?
I think I have a couple times.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a super common pose, to be honest. So unless we're doing a big twisting class, it's not a standard pose that you see in regular classes. Misalignment, wonky foundation. Those are actually the words they have in here. So the feet are just not set up correctly. So we want to generally go in from a pyramid, which is the same feet as our warrior one, generally. Again, today I took you in from high lunge. So it was a wider stance, which meant our back foot could be a little more turned forward. So some people are going to be more successful from that wider stance. Other people will be more successful from the shorter stance. So you may want to play with it both ways to see. Unsupported hyperextension of the front knee because that leg is straight. So we want to make sure those muscles are engaged and or knee is soft. Hips not square, so the pelvis, so this is the same in pyramid pose. So remember the front leg hip, we're shifting it back. The back one, we're shifting it forward to try to level out the pelvis. Same deal here, and it will get exacerbated as you go into the twist. So if they're already not level, it's going to be worse. Tucking the tailbone will cause a rounded lumbar spine. So we want that long tailbone. So we were in pyramid pose, we folded down, but then I asked you to come back up and I even said, bring your blocks up to their highest setting. So you had that long spine. You might get a lateral flexion happening. So as you twist, they're either dipping down this way or they're twisting like this. So you might see some, again, wonky things happening in the spine. We want to keep the spine long. Again, flexion or extension, specifically in the thoracic. So finding that neutral spine. Thinking about shoulders down away from their ears, getting that scapular stability. When we have scapular stability, we are able to twist more effectively from the spine and not from the hips. Top arm end gaining the pose. So somebody with their arm going, how many people have seen that in any pose? Like reach, like, okay, reach up to the sky. We're not trying to reach back behind us. Nobody's back there. Nobody wants to give you a high five. Just reach up to the sky. Right? That is very common. You could also take them up against the wall so that they could feel where the hand should stop as opposed to continue going on. All right. What do we got for time? Have we got time to do a little bit more with that? Not really. I think we're going to leave that alone. I was just going to break you into groups to walk through one of the poses, but I think are we feeling pretty good with those ones? Anything kind of cloudy with those?
Just gotta practice it.
Yeah, just gotta practice them, absolutely. Like I said, our revolved triangle or twisted triangle, I teach very rarely. It's a pretty big pose for most people. I do teach the revolve lunge, high and low lunge regularly. The revolved half moon, again, not terribly regular, right?
Revolve chair, we do.
Yeah, we do revolve chair from time to time. I'm not a huge fan of revolve chair because most people, no matter how many times you say it, their knees go like this.
Right.
So I'm just like, why am I bothering? I can get twists many other places. I don't need to do a twist where it's a hot mess all the time. That's kind of my take on it, right? I'm gonna do twists where people are going to be more successful and safer in their spine. That's my perspective. You are welcome to teach them, just beware that you are going to have to cue the heck out of it when you're doing more of the complex twisting. And which is funny because a chair is not one of the complex ones, but people mess that up more than they mess up a low lunge twist,
Yeah,
Interesting.
right?
I think it's harder to hold that chair and do it, yes.
Fair enough. Alright, what do we got here? Oh, I told you we weren't talking about pranayama, but we are talking about pranayama today. We're talking about breath. Alright, what time we got? Let me see here. Whoa, I think we're gonna be back to the table for a little bit, guys.
Don't forget to turn the camera.
Oh yeah. Thank you. How about I remember to stop